in my class, it was just like, it was just given that we all dissected, right? And it's more like they're tools for us. They're not, they didn't used to be living or anything, they're tools.
I was the first person to not dissect in my class, and my teacher was sort of surprised that I didn't want to do it.
I think it's a great waste of life. There's an incredible amount of pain involved for the animals. Mass numbers of frogs are disappearing from the earth. And with the process of killing them, I wouldn't want to be a frog.
What are you learning when you're forced into it? That's my question.
Right, this is a multiple pack. We have clams, starfish, there's an earthworm, there's a rat in here, the fetal pig.
Dissection. It's big business. 6 million animals a year are killed and processed by biological supply companies. As ethical and environmental objections to dissection become more widespread, parents and teachers increasingly turn to cost-effective alternatives. Who are the animals used for dissection? Where do they come from? How can a carcass like this teach a lesson about life? A PETA investigator purchased this cat named Thistle from Carolina Biological Supply Company, the nation's largest supplier of animals for dissection. Thistle was to be killed and his body processed.
For years, PETA had been receiving complaints on the biological supply houses. We were hearing reports of stolen companion animals, rough handling of animals, inhumane killing of animals, and illegal handling of chemical waste.
For more than a year, PETA's investigators documented what goes on inside the country's two largest biological supply facilities, Carolina Biological Supply and Ward's Biology. The investigators recorded 181 violations of the Animal Welfare Act, 99 violations of North Carolina anti-cruelty statutes, and 23 violations of federal safety and health regulations. How do biological suppliers get dogs like these? Animals come from breeders and dealers who have a history of maintaining animals in violation of very minimal federal requirements. The supply companies buy dogs from poorly run local pounds like this one. These dogs are being lifted off the ground by the neck on a choke pole and dumped together into a crowded gas chamber. Overcrowding leads to panic and fighting, and gassed dogs from this facility arrive at biological suppliers covered with blood. PETA's investigator remembers his encounter with such a local supplier.
One day, the CBS driver delivered a shipment of what were supposed to be dead dogs from Cabarrus County Shelter. When the animals were unloaded, from beneath a pile of dead dogs, there crawled out a small brown dog who was still alive. He had survived the gassing and a 2-hour ride in these conditions. As he was crawling out helpless and looking for comfort, the employees stood around laughing and joking, and one employee was swinging a metal rod at the dog. On another occasion, a live dog was delivered. The animal control officer was showing me the dog and then repeatedly slammed the door of the van on the dog's head, saying, "It does not matter if he gets hurt. He's going to die anyways."
How about cats like Thistle, who end up on racks like these? Residents of nearby counties, some of whose neighborhoods have been cleared of all cats in a single evening, believe that cats have been stolen for resale to biological suppliers. Local resident Sheila Ashley.
It was first brought to my attention when it was quantities of cats missing all at once. Missing cats coincided with trucks or vans or cars we would see in the area that had cages, wire cages in the back. The whole time I've been living here, I've heard, quote, the cat man, but I didn't know who he was.
Sheila Ashley talked to Mrs. Wise about how the Wises, many of whom are cat dealers, get their animals.
She said, we hire college kids and other people to go out and pick up the cats. I said, how do you get them? She said, people call us. I said, you're talking a 3 to 4 day period, and you're talking way over 100 cats here. I said, how can you possibly do it? All the cages were completely full. I didn't see any water for the cats, no food. I saw dead cats, kittens, a lot of the cats. There was anywhere from 3 to 6 cats in a cage. The cats had been fighting. Some of them were bleeding. One's ear looked like it was just about torn off. There was a dead mother cat, and some half-grown kittens were nursing off the mother cat.
If they survive their stay here, things get worse. This is the back entrance to Ward's. The black box at the left is the gas chamber. Although Ward's reports only dead cats to federal inspectors, here dealer John Wise and a young boy unload live cats onto the dock and force them into smaller cages to be gassed. Dead ones, too battered even to be prepared for dissection, are tossed aside. Inside Ward's, cat corpses are strewn about in squalid conditions. Workers in Carolina Biological's animal processing plant told PETA investigators if people knew exactly where the cats came from, they'd shut us down. Carolina Biological Vice President Ray Flagg.
We receive cats only euthanized.
From the shelters?
From the shelters.
Okay. Yeah, I get a lot of questions about that.
And I'll be pragmatic about that. If we accepted that cat from them alive, then we would have to hold it and feed it and care for it for a week before we could euthanize it. We just draw the line and say that's another additional cost that would have to go to the schools, so we don't do it.
PETA investigators discovered otherwise. Inside Carolina Biological, this metal rod is used to beat cats into their death cage. The cats, usually 25 to 30 per cage, are then loaded into a small chamber to be gassed.
He called me to find out what he had said about the demo. He said he hadn't made a decision yet. This is a week ago. He had said about the demo.
Oh, I didn't even know.
Afterward, the gassed cats are dumped onto the floor and loaded into wheelbarrows to be taken to the formaldehyde station. They're treated as refuse, their bodies tossed recklessly around in front of the alert cats. In a back room, cats from the chamber are already being processed, stretched out on wooden boards. The cats, many of whom are still alive, are hooked up to tubes and slowly filled with a formaldehyde solution, an extremely painful process. Watch closely as the cats struggle while the formaldehyde enters their bodies. According to PETA's investigator,
cats were gassed for 5 minutes or less. Some were clenching and unclenching their paws. They would close their jaws and bite down on the sponges that had been stuffed into their mouths.
Veterinarian Susan Persico.
Immediate embalming without adequately ensuring death is cruel and causes unjustifiable pain and suffering. Formaldehyde injection is not approved as a humane method of euthanasia.
These rats are also hooked to formaldehyde while still living. PETA's investigator.
Employees often joked about the way the animals, especially the rats, would move and kick about when they were hooked up to the formaldehyde tube.
Dr. Suzanne Cliver.
The violent kicking of the rats can be nothing other than intense pain.
Here, an employee hooks up a live rat to the formaldehyde pump and then spits on him. Callous behavior is the norm. Here, fully conscious crabs are injected with formaldehyde. Joking about the animals, like this dead dog, is routine.
One morning, one of the men held a struggling rabbit underwater. He kept pulling him out of the water as a joke and then finally drowned him.
There are other drawbacks to dissection. Biologists agree the continued removal of frogs at the current rate could spell environmental disaster in many regions of the world. In India, for example, which used to be the main supplier of frogs for dissection, they found that as frogs were removed, the insect population exploded, especially insects such as the malaria carriers that are deadly to both humans and other animals. Carolina Biological killed nearly 33,000 frogs during one 3-week period in the summer of 1990. Biological supply companies can be chemical wastelands. Pete is investigator.
The barrels contained phenol, isopropanol, resin, you name it. I would watch employees dump the residue from the barrels with the chemicals all mixed together and let them seep into the ground.
The U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration calls formaldehyde a complete carcinogen.
The stench was unbearable. Sometimes animals would explode from preservative overload, and their body fluids and the formaldehyde would splat you in the face.
The long-term effects of inhaling formaldehyde during classroom dissection are not yet known. What are the alternatives? Educators like advanced placement biology teacher Tom Arnold have found a wealth of them.
In my classroom, I don't allow any dissection. The experience of using computer modeling as opposed to actual animals in dissection allows a student to learn the same information, perhaps more readily because one can avoid all the mess of the actual dissection, and at the same time, the student doesn't have to feel as though they're being immoral and unethical by using actual animals.
Computer games like Visifrog and Operation Frog introduce students to basic physiology. Visifrog offers complete information and quiz options on every major life system of the frog. Programs like Flexicomp from IntelliTool let students learn about human physiology by studying each other. Physical models provide the added benefit of detailed views of both internal and external animal anatomy, anatomically scaled and numbered for easy identification. These coloring books help familiarize students with anatomy and zoology.
That's just his muscles.
These options give hands-on experience and practice without compromising values or taking lives. Dissection is a $30 million a year industry. Schools can spend thousands of dollars on a single order. 12 bullfrogs, enough for 24 students, cost between $67 and $118. Most non-animal models and programs can be used for years, but pay for themselves within 1 year. Many countries now prohibit or restrict dissection of animals like thistle. In Great Britain, as in Switzerland, Argentina, Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands, dissection below the university level is outlawed or not required.
If half the people knew the story about thistle, I don't think they'd be so gung-ho about dissection or throwing frog legs across the room. You know, no one thinks that, hey, that little kitten that we love so much could have been, like, on my lab table in biology.
I would basically tell everybody that all animals are equal, and they're all living, and they all can feel pain. All living creatures can feel pain.
I think that the kids who didn't have a chance to use the book lost a lot because the book really diagrammed and explained a lot more.
When I was in high school, as a matter of fact, I was in a biology class and refused to dissect a frog and was given a D. My daughter has chosen, as of last year, to not dissect. And because of that, she's seen as a leader among her peers.
If your school still uses dissection, please call the dissection hotline at 1-800-922-FROG, or call People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals at 1-301-770-PETA. You can change to positive teaching techniques today.